thrilled to have with us Dr. Buster Evans, the Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement System, who always brings us important information and in such an engaging way. We are excited to have you with us, Dr. Evans, and I'm not going to take up any more of your time. It's all yours.
Oh, Tony, you were so kind. Thank you. I thought I was going to get to listen to you guys talk a little bit of GAE stuff, but I love to be with you guys at the lunch bunch or either in person or wherever you are. So thanks for this opportunity to catch up with you and to share with you some things from across the spectrum. Now, you tell me what my time frame is, because I don't want to take more time than what I'm supposed to. And
Tony, you're muted.
Sorry, we need 5 minutes at the end for announcements. So you've got.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, right. I'm just going to go. And if y'all tell me to you get ready to shut me up, just tell me. I can handle that. But anyway, it's great to be with you. I really value our great friends with the GAE-Retired group. You guys are just absolutely the best. I know that you're there. We appreciate you. I've got a comment. Karen, Tony, Lisa, Joe, everyone who was really engaged with legislative work during this last legislative session. Thank you so very much for doing that. A lot of times I'm sitting back listening to what's going on, trying to see, but your organization should be phenomenally pleased with the work that is being done in terms of representation. And it is so important. And in the context of some of my comments today, I certainly hope that's going to be evident as well. I've got a few topics that I want to just jump right in on, so I'm going to dive in, and because these are some things that are important, and I think you will all agree. The first thing is going to be one of those very challenging and tough topics. You should have, if you've not already, received a little information about a little data breach. You're going to be the first group that I've had the opportunity to sit here and just basically have a conversation about it, because it's one of those things that we are very disappointed that has happened. And while it was not our system to be breached, it is the information of our beneficiaries that is out there. So I want you to know kind of what happened, because you actually can help. Maybe if people have questions, and they will, and they ought to, can kind of help even in this communication. But most of you have now heard that we have had what we call a third-party data breach. And let me kind of explain what that is. This has happened. Every pension system in the country that's of any size does what they call death verifications. In other words, we every month we have roughly 146,000 people that we send a benefit check to, and they're literally all over the world. You do not want to continue to pay people who are no longer alive, because the plan is simply not designed to do that. At the same time, where people have passed away and they've got beneficiaries, you want to make sure that you get good information so that you can help those people, so that you can correct that process. We hire a company. The name of the company is PBI, Pension Benefits Information Systems, that helps not only us, but almost all of the major pension systems across the country, including Tennessee, Minnesota, California, CalSTRS, CalPERS, a lot of pension systems across the nation. They take a file of data that we have that has people's names, dates of birth, and social security numbers and addresses. They take that information and they run it against systems all across the world. They use a data manager called Move It, which is a company that they use to do that, and they go the process. And then everything is, they identify any people that might have been passed away, and so that we will know to terminate those benefits. Happens every month. It's been happening for years. And all of a sudden, during the latter part of May, we didn't find out until June, but apparently this information became compromised. We did not know till probably 3 weeks later whether or not we were actually we knew that it was exposed, and we did not know that it actually had been acquired or compromised. We did find out about 3 weeks later. We have just found out within the last few days, hence the email that has gone out to our beneficiaries, and we will be following up with a hard copy of that. And I say all that to say it's one of those things that we hate has happened. We regret has happened. We think that our beneficiaries deserve better treatment than that. You know, I can't go into my living room at home with my wife there and not look at a person that's been impacted. I can't go into the room and looking at the mirror and see who is someone that's been impacted. And but it's one of those unfortunate realities that happens in the world of data today. I will say for my own self, this is not the first time this has happened to me. The first time that it happened to me, it happened with my tax assessor, whose data was compromised. And I'm going to promise you, it is not going to be the last time that it happens to you. It's the world that we live in, is that there are bad actors out there trying to get their hands on people's data as best they can. So, but we are doing some things that we make sure that we respond to this appropriately. First of all, we want you to be aware so that if you need to make any responses, now PBI will be setting up, as our letter has indicated in their letter that's going to be coming out in a few days, free credit monitoring. They're giving some suggestions, and people may want to consider whether or not they do or don't want to freeze their credit. Might be a good idea. I will tell you that personally, I have taken that act. I'd never done that before. I did not do it the previous time that my data had been breached, but I am doing it this time just because I had been thinking about doing it anyway. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We're continuing the communication process. And we'll be doing that now for several days. It has resulted in a significant number of telephone calls into our system. We normally get 800 to 900 telephone calls a day in our call center. The last couple of days, we've gotten between 1,500 and 1,600. When we get call volume like that, it slows down our ability. We've got roughly 12 people manning our phone systems, and it significantly slows us down. We knew that was going to happen, and but I will knock on wood. So far, so good. Other than the fact that there, I will take questions, but I'll wait to the end to take questions. But if you have questions about this, no. Once again, you're the first group that I've had the opportunity to talk face to face with about this. And I think it's good because you're a group that we love. You're a group that we count on. Debbie, you got your hand raised. You want to go ahead and ask a question, or let me fill something in?
Yeah, this is a quick question, Buster. I have had several members contact me because they did not receive an email. It was forwarded to them by other friends that did get the email. Can you address how some of our members are getting it by email and some are not?
Great question, and I probably should have answered that question, but in advance, we have email addresses of approximately 60% of our beneficiaries. As you know, we're always encouraging people to go online and update their beneficiaries and make sure that their contact information is there. So that's the reason why not everybody's gotten it. Now, we are working. We had a dilemma. Let me be totally frank with you. You're not going to get a letter from PBI until probably at least July the 28th. We wanted to notify people as quickly as we can, but at the same time, if we don't communicate as close to that PBI letter, people are going to get confused. And so we were trying to time our communication. But since we did have 60% of our beneficiaries' email address, we had an internal group as well as external communications. We had said, let's immediately, at no cost, let everybody that we can know. You know, as you well know, you've been a part of my conversation, it's going to cost us over $100,000 to notify our membership that there's been a data breach, that somebody else's system. It's kind of hard pill to swallow, that you're having to pay $100,000 for somebody else's mistake. but we do think it's important to notify our membership as quickly as we can. But again, timing that so we have it as close to the letter that comes out from PBI. Because right now, if you call PBI and ask for help, there's nobody that's going to be able to help you. If you call us, we're going to tell you that you're going to be getting that, but we can't tell you other than to go to our website where we do have information there that if you want to go ahead and take those steps to, let's say, freeze your credit or do something like that, you can do. So anyway, I hope I answered your question, that we did it as quickly as we could with, and yes, somebody put in there, Tennessee system was breached. You're absolutely right. CalSTRS, CalPERS. There were some systems that contract with PBI that were not breached. So we know that. Overall, now, if you may have read something a couple of weeks ago, the University System of Georgia was also involved in this. They don't use PBI, but they use Move It, the company that was actually breached. So the university system, they still have yet to identify the depth of their breach. So they have not, to my knowledge, informed any of their people yet as far as directly telling them that they were breached, because they're still trying to figure it out. And so anyway, some good points there. Thank you for those comments. But anyway, before we move on, any more questions? This is important. Maybe I won't say it's the most important thing we're going to talk about, but it certainly is a recent thing that we need to make sure that you're okay with.
I'd just like to say, Dr. Evans, that this underscores the importance of making sure that TRS has your current contact information, all of it.
Tony, could not be said any better. You're absolutely right. You know, in this process too, and I do not have this on my script, and while people are doing it, want to make sure that they update their beneficiaries. We have a campaign so that people will update their beneficiaries. I can't tell you how many times that we work with people who some way or the other have a date. They might have started to work 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They put a beneficiary. I'm dealing with one right now that a person said when he put his beneficiaries down 10 years ago, he was not of sane mind. Honestly, that's the email that he put. I won't go any further, but I understand he's marrying somebody 30 years younger than him now, and that's the reason he wanted to change his beneficiary. So I'm not sure sane mind still is the status that we would talk about, but that's all I'll say about that. All right. If you do have questions about this that come up, I'll certainly save time. I'm with you guys as long as you want. All right, I'm going from bad news to good news. Debbie knows I always like to talk about good news, but I want to talk about this next thing and talk about you to you about our investment earnings that we had for fiscal year 2023. For our system to work over the long run, for us to be able to pay benefits out for years to come, continue those cost of living adjustments that everyone so loves, we've got to have good investment returns. Now, we've taken some very conservative moves to make sure that that we have what we call a relatively reachable goal or reachable assumption level. And that assumption level is 6.9%. I am thrilled to report to you, and you're one of the first groups to hear this from us as well, but our investment returns for 2023 were basically 11.9%. That's a double-digit return. Let me tell you something that's interesting, and you will only hear this here, or you may hear it on some other places, but if you go back historically over time, you know, fiscal year 2022, we actually had a double-digit loss of a little over 12%. The markets were bad. If you had money invested in the markets, you knew it was not a good year. One of the things we've looked at and seeing that any year that in our history that we've ever had a double-digit return, the next year we have always had, or a double-digit loss, the next year we've always had a double-digit gain. And not only have we always had a double-digit gain, we typically have a double-digit gain for more than one consecutive year. Now, I'm not giving you investment advice, but I'm an eternal optimist. I am hoping that as we are moving into now fiscal year 2024, that we're going to be able to have a repeat of the year that we've just had. To tell you a little bit about how that asset allocation worked, our equities actually returned 17% gains. That's pretty good, folks, our equity. Now, we were pulled down by the bond market that was actually flat and not very good at all. And but our alternative investments, again, we talk about asset allocation. Y'all will recall this just been within the last few years that we've actually started investing in private equity or alternative investments. That asset class returned 10.43%. So overall, our gains for the year were just under 12% at 11.9%. I will take that anytime. And I look forward to going down to the legislative session the next year when people, and they're going to want to know, how did we do last year? When we talk about 12% or double-digit returns, they are less likely to want to talk to us about those dreaded two words, pension reform. So anyway, so that's the good news that I would tell you in relation to this. So what does that mean? Let me put it in terms of what an extra, if we have an assumption rate of 6.9% and we returned 11.9%, it basically means this, that we added an extra 5% on $90 billion. Now, I don't know how many math teachers we got on here, and I know public math can get you in trouble, but my mental math says that 5% on $90 billion is $4.5 billion. So bottom line, we will be adding what we will call $4.5 billion worth of alpha or extra gains into our system for next year. That's going to be good. That's going to be good for us in increasing our funding ratio, as well as pulling back on some of that pressure for increased contribution rates. Because, I will tell you, whenever we have to talk about increasing contribution rates with the legislature, they don't like that, just to be totally honest with you. So that's the second thing that I wanted to share with you today were our year-end results. It was a great year, and I'm glad to be able to report this. And I'm glad to be able to report this to you as our first retiree group that we're reporting this to this year. Let me talk real quickly about our legislative year that we just ended. Now, I know that we got together with you guys a couple of months ago and we talked, it wasn't with the lunch bunch, but it was another group. But I do want to talk about a few things legislatively, because even though the legislature has gone home, that doesn't mean they've quit thinking. It doesn't mean they quit planning. I was with several of them just over the last 2 days at the Georgia Association of Education Leaders Conference, and I've had some contact. But 2 or 3 things that I do want to share with you about our legislative year. And this, first of all, on the positive side, I'll share some things that are good, some things that are bad, and just some things that are just so. On the positive side, the one thing that we did not hear is pension reform. Once again, across the nation, pension reform has been a persistent conversation over the last couple of decades. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that as we move down here toward the end. But we didn't hear about pension reform. You guys were very supportive of legislation. It was going to be House Bill 335 that would allow our transportation, school nutrition, and school maintenance people to potentially become members of TRS. Didn't happen, folks. Didn't even get a good conversation. I can't say that I'm necessarily surprised, but I'm somewhat disappointed that at least it didn't go for an actuarial review to know what their options were. Will it come back up? It may come back up at some point in time, but because that would have been an actuarial bill, it can't move forward this next year because this is the second year of the biennium session. And but I think it was a well-intended piece of legislation. Some of you guys attended a couple of meetings, including the one that we went to over in Columbus, when the Senate Retirement Committee had a meeting over there. But that one just didn't go anywhere. And and that's just the way that it is. But we really, really do appreciate your entering into that conversation, because our PSERS employees in school systems have a terrible, I won't say terrible. It's certainly not as attractive as our teachers' retirement system in helping to recruit people and retain people in the work that they do, and the very important work that they do. You know, I used to tell people, especially first day of school, it's a success if you can get them there, if you can get them fed, and you can get them safely home. And that involves everybody who works in a classified PSERS position in a school system. And that was my experience over the years. The third thing that didn't happen, and this might be a good thing, there was nothing happened in the area of anti-ESG investing. And it may be, some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you, it may sound like this out of the world stuff that's in my background, of which I really did try to change so that y'all could see my messy office here in Atlanta. But we did not see the anti-ESG investing legislation move. We didn't see it. We did see it come forward in committee. You know, I could give you my own personal opinion, but I'll refrain from that. But I will tell you what I think is important. Our focus needs to continue to be, for our membership, let's make sure that our investments are aligned with investments that best produce the ability for us to pay COLAs, to pay benefits, and to return the best returns that we can, so that we can continue to have a sustainable retirement system in the state. But anyway, Brenda made the comment here that head custodians are members of TRS or a member of the PSERS. Yes, if they are in a supervisory position in a whether it's school nutrition custodian, they can be placed into the teachers' retirement system and should be placed in the teachers' retirement system of Georgia. So thank you for pointing that out. And I do try to read these comments every now and then, but let me move on from that. The one thing that nothing changed on House Bill 385. House Bill 385, as you'll recall, is a bill that allows full-time teachers or retired teachers to come back in critical needs area for full-time and continue to draw their retirement benefit. There was some conversation and there was some legislation drafted that would have made some tweaks with that would expand the number of people that perhaps could have come back. Once again, that's one of those things that just no traction, didn't even get introduced in committee. And so we didn't have an opportunity to have a good conversation about it, but I think it is certainly worth us watching in the future. And again, it's not going to happen this next year, at least as far as passage is concerned. But I can tell you that we've had now, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself, but we have had roughly 290 retirees come back to work full time. The number one area that they're coming back to work in is special education. Second area is mathematics, and the third is science. Folks, if there are any students that absolutely need qualified teachers, as opposed to a revolving door of substitute of non-certified teachers, it's our special needs students, it's our students in our mathematics classes, and students in science classes. So even though the numbers are really small in terms of 290, that's 290 classrooms in this state that have a certified, experienced teacher filling in. And I think that's good for kids, and I think it's the right thing to do. So let's talk about that, because I know that, well, last thing that I will mention is something to watch, because I think it's coming back. Right at the end of the session, we got wind of it early in the session, and then it never came. And then right at the end, they tried to slip it in on us. Now, y'all think that ever happens downtown? They tried to slip in a bill that would have allowed one charter school to take their new teachers coming in out of TRS and then do something else with them. I'm going to speak quite frankly on this. I'm not sure the whole truth was told in that process. Matter of fact, I'm sure the whole truth wasn't discussed in that process. I had a lengthy conversation just yesterday with some advocates of the charter school world who said that is not us, and we don't want that to happen. Who it was is a for-profit, privately owned charter school company who could care less about teacher quality. They want to get the lowest cost they can. I'm getting on a soapbox here. Sorry, folks, but you know, I'm here with my best friend, so I'm going to be frank. They were trying to get they do what they call them in the employment agency industry. They would they wanted to churn them and burn them, get them in low cost, keep them from, and they're usually getting people that could not otherwise get employed in a system. They keep them for a couple of years. Once they get a job elsewhere, they can go. You know, whether or not that's good policy or not, I don't even think that they allowed us to have the kind of conversation about. Now, we have come to the conclusion that nationally private for-profit charter schools are not typically members of retirement systems. But I will tell you, if you begin to exclude those members, those paying members into TRS, it means the other people who are left end up having to pay a bigger burden as a part. Is it a lot? Probably not in the big scheme of things, but it's the little things that happen sometimes when we're not looking that end up having unintended consequences that impact our profession. So those are the things. I think that one is probably going to come back for us to talk about. I think the anti-ESG legislation is probably going to come back for us to look at. Those were both deemed to be non-fiscal bills, even though I argue that the private for-profit one should have been a fiscal bill. And I don't think that I'm finished with that conversation, but we're there. So as far as TRS related bills, we really don't have anything that I think that we're really watching that's a fiscal bill in nature. Nothing that was a fiscal bill that I can recall off the top of my head moved forward. So I think anything that may come back and move forward during this next session will have to be non-fiscal in nature. Next thing I want to talk about, I know this came up with a question in the last few days, and it's a very timely question because the question about working after retirement comes up from time to time, and there are certain guidelines about that. And we've got a good crowd on here today, and you guys are very influential in a lot of things. So let me talk about working after retirement real quick. Like, you know, can never tell. Karen and Tony may decide they want to jump back in and teach for a few more years. Working after retirement. First of all, we have, get the numbers here. We have roughly 146,000 retirees, okay? Roughly 10% of them decide that they want to continue to work after retirement. We approve about 14,000. A lot of them come back and would like to substitute, and that's great. They make retired educators make the best substitute teachers. I can promise you that. But anyway, so roughly 10% of them, or 14,000, typically come back. We had 290, as I indicated earlier, come back to work under House Bill 385. but there are certain stipulations in which a retired educator can come back to work, and those are set forth in Georgia law. And I want to tell you what some of those stipulations are, but I'm going to do something that sometimes we don't do a good job in doing, and that's telling you why these stipulations exist, because I think that's very, very important. The first thing that, before I go there, let me tell you, and I promise you this, Georgia has one of the most lenient provisions for educators coming back to work of any retirement system or any state in the nation. And I'll point out a couple of these things. The first stipulation is they have to have a 30-day break in service. In other words, you retire, and it works out really, really well. Typically, a teacher's going to retire June 1 or July 1. They can take off the month of July. They can come back in August and September. They've got a 30-day break in service. Some states make teachers stay out a whole year before they can come back. Some make it 3 months, some 6 months. So our 30-month window is one of the shortest in the industry. Let me go in and answer a why. Our retirement plan, our defined benefit retirement plan, is what's called a 401A qualified retirement plan approved by the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS, not Debbie Simons and the Board of Trustees, not even though it's written in the in legislation, the reason legislation is written that way is the IRS requires this break in service. They don't think it's right for people to just quit and then jump back in and retire earlier than they otherwise would do, because it would put, if tens of thousands of people did this, it would put an undue stressor on retirement systems. And that's just the way that it is. And that's the reason they do this. So that's why we have a 30-day break in service. That's why they say you cannot have a no prearranged agreement. I tell you, some of our systems out there don't always follow this one really, really well. A lot of times it may be a wink and a nod or a handshake, but we actually do monitor to make sure people are not hired in advance. No, for example, it's if I'm working with a system and they say, how can I do this legally? I can say, what you can't do is take somebody's retirement in April and then at the same April meeting, have your Board of Education rehire them to come back 49%. That would look like a prearranged agreement. And in fact, it would be a prearranged agreement, most likely. So it can't be a prearranged agreement. Has to be 49% or less. Now, let me qualify that just a moment so that you know there is the provision that you can work 3 months full time and then the rest of the year 49%. And we have people do that every year. But again, that is again part of the IRS plan compliance, as well as legislation written that way. Now, I think, I'm not sure whether it was Tony or Karen, maybe Tony had someone who would ask her the question. It was what salary level can somebody come back and come to work? So let's just say that Karen's going to go back to work. And if Karen, can I pay Karen anything that I want to pay her? In other words, let's say Karen, no, you're absolutely right. The salary is based on the salary level that a person retired at when they retired, plus any increases that were granted by the legislature, plus 2.5% since that time that she retired. So let's say that retired 5 years ago. Well, and this year they didn't give them any increases, but next year they gave them 2.5%. Next year they gave them 5%. Our personnel that approved people coming back, they would look at that increases over time, and then that would be the level, according to how the law is written, that a person could return to work. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It used to not be a problem. But in recent years, we have seen, especially with the growing teacher shortage, we've seen some districts, typically someone like a Fulton or a Cobb or DeKalb, say, I got to pay you more to get you to come back, right? It's been the name of the game. I mean, money isn't attractive for people. So what has happened is, in some cases, the salary increases that, and I'm going to use Fulton as an example since I'm sitting in Fulton County. Fulton may have given other teachers more of an increase than what would be allowed under this provision written into the law. Let me give you another area where it gets to be a problem from time to time. And let's say that somebody retired as a teacher, and then say that Tony retired as a teacher, but Debbie Simons wants to hire as a superintendent, and she wants to hire Tony to come back as a principal. Okay, she thinks Tony would be a great principal. Well, principal salary is generally higher than a teacher's salary. Well, because the law was written the way that it is, there's a cap on what Tony can earn as a principal, and it goes back to what she was making when she retired, and to what she was making plus those annual increases. Is that fair? May not be fair. It's the way the law was written. So if there has to be any change in that to be done, it would have to be changed legislatively. I certainly can make the case for it, and that times are different now. But again, why is it this way? Why does the IRS put these stipulations in here? And it's because they don't want people to be incentivized from retiring too early, because that would put what they determine an undue stressor on retirement systems, whether it's Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, or whoever else that we're dealing with. Now, there are three other things that I think are pointing out, and unless you're tuned in on this webinar, you might not hear these things, but I'm going to tell you. There are 2 or 3 workarounds. First of all, how many of you knew that you could work for more than one employer in working after retirement? You could work for, if you could get the job, you could work 49% for, let's say, Fulton County, and you could also work 49% for Douglas County, if you could get a job doing that. So I do know some people doing it. I know some people who work, particularly maybe work 49% for Orisa, and then they may be working 49% for a school system. Kind of hard to juggle the schedule, but in this day and age, people will find ways to do it. But that is one way that it happens. Now, person can also work for another government agency with some stipulations. We do have people who retire, let's say, from one employer and then can go to work for another employer that's not a TRS employer and draw their TRS benefit and draw full salary. And then the other way that people can work after retirement is the fact that there is no limit, obviously, if somebody works for the private sector, or let's say works for a county government or works for the federal government or something like that. And you know, in this day and age, we do see people, especially with the inflation that we have been experiencing over the last 18 months, we've seen some people think, hey, I need to go back to work. So I think that's one of the reasons why, first of all, we've actually seen fewer retirements in this past year, because people are saying, hey, I need to work a little bit longer. And that's why in general in society, we're seeing the average working age of working adults being increasing, because we have growing costs of prices of inflation driving things up. So people feel that they need to work a little bit longer. So that's a lot of information about working after retirement, but hopefully I've answered the questions that some may have. But in case I haven't, let me pause right there before I go to the last two things that I want to talk about. Well,
Dr. Evans, while you pause, let me just say to those people who are with us, if you have not renamed yourself with your first and last name, we really should remove you from the meeting. So please do that. If you don't know how, just chat, just give us a private chat and we'll do it for you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I got two more things I want to talk about, and then we'll pause for any additional questions. I always have to talk to this time of the year. We're post-legislative session. We're getting ready to go into a new school year. We're looking forward to where we're going, and that's the future of retirement systems. And let me start by saying this. We're so fortunate in Georgia. While there have been those states that have gone through substantial pension reforms, and there are those who would even like to see Georgia go through pension reforms and changes, we generally have been supported over the years, and we've not experienced significant pension reform. So that's one thing that we can be thankful for. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, as an agency that does a phenomenal job in supporting public education and supporting public teachers, the topic of pension reform isn't going away. Okay, it's been around for the last 2 decades or so. And just this last year, we have to look and see what happens. But elsewhere, just this last year, North Dakota terminated their defined benefit pension plan, not for teachers, but for other public workers, including law enforcement and state workers. So, so that's one of the things that we see. Interestingly enough, Alaska, on the other hand, and Debbie's heard me talk about this, and actually Debbie's done a great job sharing this with some other people that I've seen. But on the other hand, Alaska, and I'm going to give you the short version, 20 years ago, Alaska terminated their defined benefit plan. And they took teachers out and they put them in a defined contribution plan. Teachers, law enforcement, all that. If you remember, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we were young folks, right, you'd hear about these people going to Alaska because they could make $100,000 a year teaching. Folks, you know what? Number one state, one of the top states in the nation for teaching shortages is the state of Alaska. Their defined benefit plan, as I said, they terminated it. And over time, their ability to keep salaries up has not been there. They're having to pay significant bonuses to law enforcement people and other people and teachers to come. So much so that their legislature is looking at reinstating a new defined benefit plan for them to be able to participate in. Now, is that going to happen? I have not looked up in the last few days to see whether or not it's passed or not. But the reality of it is it reflects and gives credence to the argument that we've continued to say that our defined benefit plan works to recruit people into the profession and retain people into the profession. They say in Alaska, that 2 out of every 3 people who are employed as a teacher in Alaska are looking to get out if they can. That's so much been the conversation even here in Georgia, in that in the law enforcement world, there has been legislation introduced that would create a new defined benefit plan for law enforcement personnel, because they're having that same kind of problem. We have a kind of what we call a hybrid plan for state workers now, but the commissioner of the colonel of the state patrol is really spearheading an initiative to create, for the legislature to create a new retirement plan for them. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but I've been in several meetings where it's been discussed. But again, I kind of love seeing that conversation takes place. It's making our argument. It's making our argument that we've got to have a defined benefit plan for the purposes of recruitment and retention. I say all that to say, I want to encourage you to remain diligent. You as GAE and GAE-Retired has been doing that. You are folks who are making a difference in ensuring that our profession takes advantage of supporting our public education teachers, and we need that support. Now, I've got one thing that I'm going to do in conclusion, but let me pause and make sure that all the questions have been answered. And I realize I'm 45 minutes in, and I've enjoyed every second of it, whether you have or not. But I do want to close with something, but let me see if we've got any questions, Tony, and I'll be glad to try to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to give a closing statement and then move on.
Any questions for Dr. Evans? Raise your hand and you'll move to the top of our grid. If you don't know how to use the raise your hand feature, just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, I'm thrilled, Tony, that I have so sufficiently bored everyone that I've put them in a comatose lunchtime state. So
this has been a rich presentation. Keep going, keep going.
All right, so I'm gonna close. You know, most of us on this video spent a significant amount of time working in the field of public education. You know how rewarding it is. You know the difference that you made in folks' life. But you know, every now and then we reach a point, unfortunately, that we may second guess ourselves, and we may wonder, did we really make a difference? Well, let me close with a little metaphor, anecdote, story, and maybe hopefully it'll put a smile on your face in regards to your life and what you've done. How many of you remember the movie Mr. Holland's Opus? I don't know if you've not watched it, but it's still out there and you can watch it. But this movie came out sometime in the 90s. Maybe some of you remember it, but Mr. Holland's Opus was about a dedicated music teacher by the name of Glenn Holland. At the beginning of Mr. Holland's career, he had dreams that he was going to be a famous composer. He dreams of living in Hollywood and writing theme songs and movies, but he never gets to do that because instead he spends 30 years in the classroom as a music teacher, teaching young students at a high school. With great tenderness, he works with a young red-headed girl with pigtails who wants to play the clarinet. No one believes in her. No one helps her. No one encourages her but Mr. Holland. With great compassion, Mr. Holland works with a streetwise tough kid with a lousy attitude who wants to play the drums, but has a terrible time finding the beat. The conclusion of the film is classic. Mr. Holland retires, and as he cleans out his music room at the school, he tells his wife and his son, I feel like I've been such a failure. He never accomplished his dream. He never went to Hollywood, and he never became a famous composer. So with slumped shoulders, he leaves his classroom for the very last time. But he hears a noise in the auditorium. And he opens the door, and as he opens the door to that auditorium, it's jam-packed with his former students. They give him a long and thunderous standing ovation. They've come back to express their love and appreciation to this wonderful man who gave so much of his life to them. Then the little girl with the red pigtails comes to the microphone She's all grown up now, and in fact, is the governor of the state. She says, Mr. Holland, we know that you've never got to become the famous composer that you've dreamed of being, but don't you see, your greatest composition is what you did with us, your students. Mr. Holland, look around you. We are your greatest opus. Mr. Holland, we are the music of your life. For everyone who's on this video today, your opus is phenomenal. There are those whose lives you've lost touch with, but as this new group of teachers starts, let's continue to encourage them because their legacy is going to be built just like yours has been built, making a difference in the field of public education. And let's all sing a symphony together as we celebrate this wonderful field of public education. Thanks. Have a great day and a great year. And I look forward to joining you the next opportunity I get the chance.
Thank you so much, Buster. And I do see a hand. Essie, do you have a question or did you just?
Yes, I did put it in the chat. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can retired teachers still apply for lifetime certification through the state? And if so, how?
Okay, well, that is actually a Professional Standards Commission question, but I believe I can answer it. No, you do not. You cannot apply. There may be some people who out there who still have lifetime certification, but to my knowledge, that is not available anymore. Now, those people who are retired who still have their certification and want to keep their certification, they can work with the Professional Standards Commission, and you can go to their website. Matt Arthur is a great friend of mine, longtime friend. He's their director there. He can do a phenomenal job, or they've done a phenomenal job helping people get their recertification. And I actually recertified a few years ago myself, just in case I thought that I might want to go back, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to do that. Great question, though, my friend.
Thank you so much. That was a good question. No, there is not lifetime certification anymore, Essie. All right. I can't find the words to thank you enough, Dr. Evans, for once again bringing us a rich and engaging presentation full of information that we need, that we want. Thank you for addressing up front the questions that we had about the data breach and the question we had about return to work. And you always bring your A game. Thank you so very much.
Thanks. Love y'all. Have a great day.
All righty. Just a couple of things to share with you. First of all, I'd like to remind you that July 21st at 11 o'clock, we have our summer business meeting, GAE-Retired summer business meeting. We have a lot of things to discuss, a lot of decisions to make. You can point your phone now at the QR code that's on the screen and register for the meeting. If you've already registered for something with Mobilize, you should be getting a notice from Mobilize to register for that meeting. We do have a lot of decisions to make at that meeting. And also, if you're interested in engaging with GAE-Retired, you've been looking for a point where you can plug in. We are in the process of forming a racial and social justice committee. And we are going to meet on July 22nd to work on our vision and mission. If you want to contact me, I will put my contact information in the chat, but it's there on the screen. You can call me. I got a call about it this morning, in fact, and welcome someone to the committee, or you can email me. So I'll put that contact information in the chat. Also, I want to let you know that our next lunch bunch, which will be the first Wednesday in August, will feature our own GAE president, Lisa Morgan. And I had the graphic up, but I don't have it up anymore. Maybe Karen can get that up while I talk. This is going to be another rich and fruitful presentation. President Morgan always brings us information that we need to know. She'll talk to us about opportunities for us to engage, to help GAE continue to grow and thrive. We are the premier association in the state of Georgia for advocating for public education employees and students. And for those of you who say that GAE went through a slump, we are back, baby. We are #1 in recruiting in NEA. We are #1 in growth. And so we know that the message is getting out there. We want you to engage and hear from President Morgan. So please join us as she shares her vision for GAE and how GAE-Retired can plug into the mothership. So please join us on August 2nd. And there's a QR code for registering for that. And if you are already registered for some event and mobilized like this one, then you will get a notice to register for that. And we'd like to see you all there. Do remember July 21st, we will meet virtually. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat, and you will be able to contact me directly, but I can give you my telephone number, which you can text me or call me. It's 404-539-8660, 404-539-8660.
And before we close out, I want to acknowledge on this Zoom, we do have the chair of the TRS Board of Trustees, Debbie Simons. She is a pre-retired member, and if you've been a member of GAE for a while, you'll realize also that Debbie was a former GAE president. So we are very fortunate, in my humble opinion, in our organization to have someone so knowledgeable leading TRS and communicating that information back with other people, including GAE. So Debbie, thank you for being here. I know you're only a phone call, a text, or a carrier pigeon message away, and you answer. So thank you so much.
And before you all go, I'd like for you to join me in giving a big Zoom clap to outgoing Senior Director Karen Solheim. Karen is rolling off of the board of directors as a retired at-large director. She's termed out. And you will know that Karen was formerly president and vice president of GAE-Retired. She has been our backbone, the wind beneath our wings, and she still is. We're trying to convince her to retire and reinvent herself, because she has really given her all to GAE and GAE-Retired. So please join me in thanking her for her decades of service to GAE and GAE-Retired. Don't know what we're going to do. Just don't know what we're going to do.
Well, thank you, Tony, for those lovely words.
Is there anything else for the good of the whole? Is there anything else for the good of the whole? Is there anything else for the good of the whole? Cyril, are you speaking? You're muted.
Okay. Hi, it's actually Marsha Jones. I'm sorry, I didn't change my daughter's name off of here. I had a question. I was read one of the in the loop, and it had information about employment with NAEP, and I was wondering if you know any more about that, because I had not heard anything, and I just wanted to know more.
You're going to have to follow the link to find out exactly what the duties and responsibilities are. I believe it's something they're offering across the nation. NAEP does assessments that norm student achievement. If you've worked in a high school, you'll be familiar with the fact that students are selected to participate in that exam. And so if you'll follow that link that's provided there or type in that email address, you should be able to get more information about it. And I will make sure that I know more at our next lunch bunch.
Okay, because I did fill in the information and they said they would get back by June 30th. So I just haven't seen anything. But okay,
Oh.
thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the whole?
Yeah, Tony, can you hear me? This is Laura Mantrone.
Yes.
Two things. I tried to rename my thing and I put my name in, but it didn't come up. So renaming
It
means
did.
putting
Your name is there, Lauren.
Oh, okay,
Your
good.
name
I
is
couldn't see
there.
it from
Yeah.
here. My question number two, I was in and out because I had trouble with my phone. You didn't all talk about what's going on with the weapon, the GPO, whatever that stuff is, the Social Security stuff. And did Senator, I'm sorry, I can't even talk. Did everyone sign off in the state of Georgia besides Warnock? Did Ossoff sign off for that?
Not yet.
All right, I've
Reach
got
out
someone
to
who
him.
knows. I'm sorry.
Reach out to him.
I have someone in he's from my neighborhood. He grew up in Inman Park,
Okay.
and I know someone who knows him well, so I'm gonna stick him on her. And do you know why he hasn't signed off on it yet?
I don't understand. I really don't.
Okay, I'm gonna work on that. I will be making calls right now.
Thank you very much.
And is there anything else? Did they go? They went up to Washington, right? We went up and complained, or anything else happened after that?
Karen, you want to share that? We've got a few minutes. We're over time, but
We
we
are
can
over
take a
time.
minute to address that.
Just there were representatives from each of the 15 GPO WEP states, and we were able to leave information or have a direct meeting with staff of 14 of the 16 Georgia congressional teams.
Okay, I'll still work on it then.
Thank
I
you.
know you may be timing out, but thanks. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you all. I want to respect your time. We are a minute over, so we're going to end today. We will see you all in August. We will see you all hopefully on July 21st at our business meeting. Contact me if you have any questions. One last time, 404-539-8660. Call or text me and I'll answer your call. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.